Okay, everyone, it is 12 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today we have Barbara Gavin. She is the head of River Star Homes program, and she's going to be showing us a little bit about the Elizabeth River project today. So I'll pass it over to Barbara.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Haley. Yes, hi, everybody. Barbara Gavin. I'm with the Elizabeth River Project. As Haley mentioned, I manage our River Star Homes program. So I'm going to talk a bit about the Elizabeth in general today, some of the things that you all can do at home, things you can teach and tell your clients, and ways that we can help. So this will be about 20 minutes, give or take, and then we'll have time for questions afterwards. If you have anything you want to throw in the chat while I'm speaking, don't hesitate. If you want to raise your hand or reach out with any questions, feel free to do so. All right, so if anybody's not familiar with the Elizabeth River Project, we are the leading nonprofit working to restore the Elizabeth River to the highest practical level of environmental quality. And we use a collaborative model, so we don't lobby or point fingers, we partner. And whether that's with groups like this, with government organizations, business entities, community partnerships, you name it, we're doing it. So many of the things that we do focus on water quality. That is the ultimate goal. That's what a lot of things ultimately come back to. And I'm excited to say that there's been a lot of really great progress, over the last 2 decades or so. And we like to think we had a big role in that. So this is just to give you sort of an overall idea. On the left is a graph of the grades of the river from back in 2013 timeframe. You can see that the worst portions were on the eastern branch of the Elizabeth, where they had grades of F. And that brings a lot of different criteria into place to give it that grade. And when we did our water quality monitoring in 2020, we found that the grades had either increased or stayed the same throughout the whole river. So that was really exciting. And we've, again, been able to see those tangible impacts. So we have people that can interact with the river in safe and healthy ways now. We have kids that are fishing for the first time and finding healthy species throughout the whole river. We're finding incredible oyster populations in places where we've done wetland restoration and oyster restoration, like that massive clump that Joe is holding there. So what is the role that you can play? I've got basically 3 goals for today. So we're going to talk first about River Star actions. So what are the things that, again, you can do at home or your clients can do that can improve water quality in the river? Second is waterfront living in particular. So what is it that your client can and can't do on their waterfront properties? What entities have jurisdiction over those choices? And then third is the role that we play, right? So what assistance can we provide, whether it's cost share or providing example sites, resources and guidance, things like that. So first is River Star Homes. So again, that's our free pledge program. Folks agree to 7 things that we know reduce pollution in the Elizabeth River. We have over 6,500 people in this program throughout the entire watershed. So Norfolk, Portsmouth, Chesapeake, and a portion of Virginia Beach. It's a really simple program. It's, just a free pledge. Folks agree to 7 things that they probably already do. It's pretty common sense, but they might not realize the impact that that choice has on water quality. People get, a free beautiful yard flag to display at their home and show their commitment to a healthier Elizabeth. We then have cost share opportunities, right? So we partner with the localities, 3 of the 4, to provide funding to people that want to do projects that, again, reduce pollution in the Elizabeth. We can provide guidance or resources to people that want to do DIY projects. We have a free tree program, all that good stuff. And I'll also mention that Haley has this presentation as a PDF, and anywhere where you see a Learn More Here button, if you're looking at this as a PDF, please click on it. It's a link to something important that if I was there in person, you'd have a physical copy of. So in this case, this would take you to the River Star Homes website and more things that we'll go through. So again, 7 easy steps, things people probably are already doing, simple things like picking up after your dogs, reducing excess lawn fertilizers, keeping leaf litter out of the storm drains, don't put grease down your sink, no one wants sewage backup. Don't feed geese because we want to encourage them to migrate as much as possible. avoiding single-use plastics when you can. So, you know, using those reusable water bottles or shopping bags. And then don't flush medicines, right? HRSD doesn't have the capacity to get that out of the water. So it'll often go into species in the river or fish and then back into people up the food chain when we go and eat them. So again, a lot of people do those 7 things. They make that commitment. That's wonderful. We know that those actions collectively have a big impact on water quality. And then I like to tell people, you know, so you've made your personal changes, then what are the things that your home can do? What are the things that you can do in your backyard or, you know, on your actual property? So take a look, whether it's us doing a site visit or thinking about things that they can make improvements for. Is it adding a rain barrel? Is it planting along your waterfront to soak up stormwater? Is it putting in a rain garden or just changing how you maintain your lawn? All of those things, again, have a big impact. So we're going to go through what some of that looks like. So again, lawn care changes. There's a lot of things that people can do, and the lawn guide that's linked here is also here. So a great guidance document to give to your clients, things that they can do to reduce pollution, like using slow release nitrogen fertilizer so you aren't putting out more than the grass can actually absorb. If there's anything left in the next rain event, it just washes into the storm drain. So a waste of their money and a waste of pollution. Mowing high, shades out weeds, you know, taking extra care when we're doing waterfront mowing, which we'll talk a little bit about later. You know, and if people use lawn care providers, there's really great guidance documents, and it's also in this lawn care plan. There's questions you can ask that any decent lawn care company needs to be able to answer. You know, do they know what kind of grass you have? Is it warm or cool season? Do they have a personalized plan? All those things make a big impact. That tree program that I mentioned earlier, so all of the localities have a tree canopy goal, and almost all of them have a goal to increase that tree canopy. That's also one of the things that we put into our watershed action plan is a watershed-wide increase in urban tree canopy. So in Norfolk and Chesapeake, we have a contract with the cities, and they include a free tree program. So if somebody's interested in, you know, planting a small ornamental tree, sort of like a fringe tree, or a service berry, or if they have a larger space that's a little wet where they could put a river birch or a beautiful sourwood, that's an option too. Rain gardens, again, are a great way of soaking up that excess pollution. So if you have a storm drain, sorry, not a storm drain, a downspout that's going to an area and you want to move it away from the house, rain gardens are a great option. You do need to be able to excavate for them. So if that's not an option, conservation landscaping is sort of the alternative. It has the same features on the surface. It's still, you know, slightly bowl shaped, is in the path of running water, can help slow it down, soak it in, reduce those excess pollutants because the native plants are soaking them up. But in this case, you don't have to excavate, you know, 3 to 4 feet deep to break through our layer of clay. And again, that's something that we can cost share. Buffer projects. So, you know, thinking about that buffer area between the river or a wetland and the backyard is an incredibly important area for habitat value and for pollution reduction. So when you have an opportunity to plant that space, this is a great example of a site that we did in Virginia Beach where the Schock family had this beautiful backyard, you know, zoysia turf grass that they had worked on for years, but it's on this slope. And it's just way too much of a pain for them to have to mow. And they were putting in this wetland anyway. So they said, okay, well, let's just transition it into a native buffer. So again, trying to emphasize how to beautify the view, how to keep it easy to maintain is key. This is another site we did over on the Eastern Branch, over in the Ingleside neighborhood, where brand new construction, the person bought the lot, we helped build a living shoreline, they built their house, and then we came in and did the buffer planting. You know, obviously on a brand new site, new house, new dock, new everything, they really wanted it to be, in this case, more uniform. So we went with a lot of really pretty grasses, seasonal interest, but again, you maintain the view. We have a lot of people here that, you know, we'll talk about living shorelines in a second, but they have bulkheads, right? And they might have one that's really intact, or the elevation might be pretty high, so they don't really need to remove the bulkhead. It's in great condition. Well, then in that case, you can plant behind it. So like Lynn did here at her house over on Indian River. Again, she maintains her view. She works in it a couple times a year. She's got really great value for habitat. This is the other view of that shoreline. So lots of seasonal interest and all native plants. So all things that are adapted to our environment here, like living in this space, easy to find. And then we have living shorelines. So this is a project type that we really focus on heavily because it's something that is so cost effective for pollution reduction value. It's the most effective of all of our BMPs when it comes to reducing nitrogen and phosphorus and sediment pollution in the river. Again, something that can be cost shared and something that is cost shared not just by us, but other groups. The state has a program called Virginia Conservation Assistance Program that helps people pay for these practices too. And there's really several things that a living shoreline does. Again, it reduces that polluted runoff. It improves water quality. It can help stop erosion and prevent future erosion. It can create connected shorelines that are much more resilient to storms, wave energy, sea level rise, tidal changes. And they're actually the preferred method of shoreline restoration in Virginia. So that's something that's really important to think about if you're selling a new waterfront property and a bulkhead is failing or something like that. It's important to think about the ways that people can legally restore their shoreline. And this is an example of what one of those looks like. So this was, again, that house that someone purchased that they were going to build a new house on. It was just an empty lot. They had what we lovingly called Norfolk rubble, which is just bricks and pieces of old street and sidewalk from downtown and all sorts of stuff. And it was actively eroding. They were the tree that you see, that oak tree, was at a threat of being lost. So we came in and built this wetland restoration project. So the castles that you see out front are called oyster castles. So they provide that oyster habitat value as well as hold back the sand. We then planted it with low marsh and high marsh plants, and now they have this beautiful thriving wetland. And this was a first-time waterfront property owner, right? So I worked with him for years and still do, and handheld and walked through the process and all of the different things that play a role in waterfront living. This is another example of a house over on Indian River in Chesapeake where the bulkhead had failed years and years ago. It was way out here, if you all can see my cursor, originally, and they were losing about a foot of their shoreline every year. So again, we came in, created this wetland restoration project, and it's thriving. It's absolutely beautiful. You also have an opportunity for, again, yourselves or clients, if anybody has that bulkhead where they can't restore wetlands or they really want oysters but don't have an opportunity, they're welcome to do the Spat Catcher program. So spat are baby oysters. You can grow them from your dock. We have a program for this right now, and then the Chesapeake Bay Foundation will have one this summer. So if anybody's interested, again, just hit that Learn More Here button or reach out to me. My email will be at the end. So this graphic is one that I find to be really, really helpful. I implore you, maybe even beg you, to share this with your clients when you can. We meet so many well-intentioned people that have never lived on the water before and do something that results in them getting a really hefty fine. And it could have been easily avoided because they just don't know that other people have jurisdiction over what they do on their shorelines. So this is a really great resource. It's available online. Many people have shared it. You've probably all seen it, I hope. But it just sort of points out that, on a tidal shoreline, the Virginia Marine Resource Commission technically owns the bottom. So they own anything past the mudflat. The Wetlands Board has jurisdiction over anything that happens within the wetlands. Army Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction over the entire thing. And then the Chesapeake Bay Act, Chesapeake Bay Protection Area, is anywhere within that 100% or 100 feet buffer inland. So that can be the state, or it could be, you know, local, again, an asset of each locality. So when we talk about the rights of owners, I always try and let people know when we do that original site visit, you know, a reminder, you own the mud flat. So they might have a plat or something that says that they own, you know, all the way out to the middle of a creek. But if at low tide that creek has water running through it, they don't own it. The state does. So this is a great example of that. You know, owners have their rights and privileges. They own such land, they extend to the mean low water mark. So this is a great resource to have. This is an example of, you can see this yellow line here, that essentially her property line. This was at a good low tide. And then this wetland restoration that we did, you can see those oyster castles fall right in that line. So when we did her design and permitting for her living shoreline, we went through Army Corps of Engineer approval, Virginia Marine Resource Commission, and the Portsmouth Wetlands Board. It's a really simple process. You know, it's just one permit for all of those agencies, and they all review the same application. But it is something for people to remember that's very important. Karen, yeah, you have a question?
Who paid for those shoreline projects?
Yeah, so all of the shoreline projects that we've done, and we've done over 70 residential living shorelines, they're all cost shared in some way. So in this case, this is a Portsmouth property. So this has been funded, and we did this last year, by the Virginia Environmental Endowment. So we have a grant with them where they cost share 50% of the project costs. If I go back here, this is again over in Chesapeake. So this one was cost shared by the city of Chesapeake. This site in Norfolk was cost shared by the city of Norfolk. It just depends on the jurisdiction and the time. This site was also in Eastern Branch, where we had a NIFWIF grant, which is National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So they supported volunteer costs to help with the install of the plants. All right. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. All right. So this is, I hope something that will be really helpful. There's a lot of things that are completely allowable. They just require permitting or approval. And again, it can be an easy process or an arduous process, depending on what it is or who you need to work with. Wetlands or shoreline restoration, that requires, again, permitting, and that's that one application that is reviewed by the Wetlands Board, Army Corps of Engineers, the Virginia Marine Resource Commission. If you are going to make impacts to that, 100-foot riparian area, so if you're building a wetland restoration, then you need to use equipment, and you're going to disturb over a certain square footage. I think it's 2,500 feet. You have to have an erosion and sediment control plan, and that's just something that you write out to that Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act board. For tree removal, that requires approval and often mitigation. So if it's a dead or dying tree that has to be removed, places like Norfolk have a 1-to-1 replacement requirement. So if you're removing a dying pine tree, you're required to just put in 1 more large canopy tree, or 3 small canopy trees, or 10 shrubs. They're one of the most relaxed when it comes to that, or flexible, I should say. Any new impervious surfaces are another thing that require approval. So if it's within that CBPA area, if you're like, we had somebody that was pouring a concrete pad for their trash cans, and it was right in their buffer, but it was also the closest to the street. So where she wanted to put it made a lot of sense. However, it wasn't allowable. So she got in trouble with the Wetlands Board. So something to think about. Now, something that may not be allowed at all is restoring a failed bulkhead. Because remember, I said earlier that living shorelines are the preferred method of wetland restoration or shoreline restoration, period, in Virginia. So you have to argue for something different. You just have to make the case for it. So for instance, I think this site on the right is a really great example of that, where both of these properties had 2 different bulkheads. They both wanted to do living shorelines. But if they hadn't, right, if they had come to us and said, look, I want to keep this bulkhead right where it is and I want to restore it, the Wetlands Board and the permitting agencies would have said, but you don't need that bulkhead in the first place. That doesn't need to be there. They don't have, they're on this small creek. There's no wind and wave energy hitting it. It's just very old, but they also already have wetlands growing behind it on both sides, both neighbors. So in this case, it was, okay, we're just going to take out these old bulkheads. We're going to grade and we're going to put in a new structure. So like oyster castles, and get new wetlands growing. Sometimes it's completely allowable. There is always going to be that site that a living shoreline is not the right choice. If it has 2 miles of open water that you're facing with really high wave energy, or a really big scarp, where a house is up here and you have a cliff, putting a wetland out front of it is not going to protect it, right? And for us, we also want to make sure that we're maintaining connected shorelines as much as possible. So that's also something to keep in mind. Waterfront mowing, like I mentioned earlier, is something to take into account. Mowing wetlands is illegal. So this is a great example of that. This is a house over in Norfolk where we did this living shoreline several years ago. And we only installed about half of the Spartina Peyton plants that you see here. So every year she goes in and increases her, no-mow zone of her St. Augustine turf grass, because the wetlands are migrating inland, which is what they're supposed to do. That's the exact result that she wants. They're going to keep migrating inland and protecting her shoreline long term. Another example, this is a house with a large shoreline over in Norfolk, a lot of linear feet, where again, the bulkhead was in great condition, but it was being overtopped. So they already had wetlands growing. In this case, they said, well, the bulkhead's in great condition. We want to maintain access to our dock. So how about we just create this no-mow zone? And it naturally sprung up with all of the plants that were already there. So they stopped mowing. They've got this beautiful high marsh, and several little like aster flowers that pop up in the summer. It's really beautiful. All right, so third and final topic, resources. What are the things that we can help with, things that we can do? We have shoreline restoration guidance. So again, things that we can provide, like this living shoreline handout is on our website, is linked. You can find it easily, share it with people about the benefits of living shorelines, what sites it works best for, what does maintenance look like. All of those questions are answered on that document. We also have our home planting guide. So a guidance resource for folks that are just looking to, increase native habitat, or if you have somebody who's purchasing a property with a really big yard and they want to decrease the amount of turf grass, this is an easy resource for them. Again, we have our lawn care guide. We have guidance documents for shorelines like the SAGE brochure. This is a fantastic resource that's put together by the Army Corps of Engineers that, again, I encourage you to have or find. It's a really fantastic resource for what is permittable shoreline restoration. How much does it cost? What does it look like? What's the process? What is the best site for each? It really walks through all of those things. And then we have the Resilience Lab. So this is the facility that we are building on the Elizabeth River. So it's going to be our new headquarters, our new main office that WPA helped put together the designs for. It's in construction now, and it should be done this summer, knock on wood. So hopefully we'll be moved in by the fall. And the site, as you can see from these photos, it's really aimed at being an example site. So that backyard area is a living park or a learning park that's going to be open to the public during the day while the office is opened, and it'll have an observation boardwalk, a kayak launch, a boat dock so we can partner with universities. And just very quickly, you can see in this video what some of those assets look like, because we want it to be an example site. So you can go out on that boardwalk and look at a living shoreline. So when I say a living shoreline, you don't just go, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is, right? We want to be able to have people tour rain gardens and look at rain barrels or a green roof or a large cistern if they have the roof capacity for it, and really have a great understanding of what these practices look like in real life when they're being used and how they can implement them at home. So the facility is going to be on North Collie, 4610 North Collie, I believe is the street address. And again, it'll be open to the public. We have our public opening, I believe, in October. And this facility will be, or this backyard is the section that'll be open to the public with all of those resources. So if you've been nearby and had to deal with the construction or the road closures, I'm very sorry. We promise it'll be done soon. So thank you all for your time. I think we stuck pretty close to our time limit, which is great. You're welcome to join us. You know, we are always welcoming donations or memberships. If you're interested in getting involved, you're welcome to volunteer with us. It is wetland restoration season. So if you want to come out and volunteer at a living shoreline installation, please do. My staff is out there doing it right now. Please tell your clients, you know, about our funding opportunities, and even just to reach out. I'm happy to do site assessments or site visits for folks that just want some guidance and some ideas. We do work specifically in our watershed, which is something to keep in mind, but there's also many other organizations that do similar things like Lynnhaven River Now or James River Heroes. So happy to point anybody in the right direction. And that's everything. So thank you.